Playing online and on smart devices. Now on London Scottie Radio, it's podcast time. I'm George Matlock. Hello and welcome to London Scottie Radio. I'm George Matlock, your host for today's programme. It's Collared, the last edition of the year. Indeed, today the 31st of the month. The end of 2021 is nigh, and I hope it means, soothsayers will probably back me up on this, that we look forward to a far better and brighter and healthier 2022. But we'll be talking more about that, I'm sure, later in this programme. Welcome to the show. Collared. We go really in-depth, really, with our guests. I'm really delighted to tell you that we have on the line today a member from very much from sort of east of London, and it's Karen Randall. A good day to you.
Yes, hello, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for joining us, Karen. Now, I should start really by sort of giving where you're based. I know you're sort of eastward. I mean, you live not very far from Barking, don't you? How appropriate is that?
Yeah, it's not too far. Yeah, I'm in Upminster. It's just a little bit further out.
Right. Why did that town ever get that name? You know, Barking. Was there once a big bark of dogs, and they thought, well, we'll call it Barking?
I don't know, but you know what? I'm going to start looking it up tomorrow and find out.
The great thing that Google is. Right. Well, Karen, thank you so much for joining us on this programme, and indeed the very, very last programme of this year, 2021. And you're a recent joiner to the London Scottie Club. I know that you joined a few months back, and you had a lovely, precious dog called Remy, and she was taken poorly, but this is rather odd, literally the day after you joined the club, which is not a very good advert for us, but I know it was a complete coincidence.
It was a coincidence, yes. She was, unfortunately, she was poorly when I got her. She had bladder cancer, but it wasn't too bad to start with, and she was on medication, and she was doing quite well, but unfortunately, with all these things, and being an older dog, it just took hold.
Yeah.
So,
and how did, in terms of the sort of the prognosis, what were the doctors saying about your dog's survival? How long did they give her?
Well, it's strange actually, because originally when I got her, they said that it was not too bad, but they weren't sure how long it would be. But with STECS and the advice I got from them, with various things that I gave her white thistle, which is it helps with their digestion, and it's just a general sort of healthy thing for Scotties. And also she was on Metacam, and Metacam can help reduce the tumours. So they weren't really sure of an exact sort of length of time. It was only in the last few weeks that they said anything between 2 and 6 months. But it happened a lot quicker because she had, unfortunately, 2 tumours in her intestines as well. And she lost the use of her back legs. They think she might have had a stroke. But it happened really quickly. It all happened within a week. Like the really serious stuff happened within a week. And she was just very poorly, but an adorable dog. Absolutely.
And in a very short period of time, you, of course, made lots of friends. I know that on our WhatsApp group, let's see now. I don't know. I can't remember counting how many days after it was that you joined, but I know that the very next day after you joined London Scottie Club, you announced that she was she had taken a turn for the worse.
Yeah.
And then very soon afterwards, you announced the very sad news that we'd lost Remy, and of course there was a flood of sympathy from all of our members, and I think that's
they were amazing, absolutely amazing. Really, really kind. Some lovely thoughts and some lovely things that they said. It was really amazing. And I think the thing was with Remy was, as I did mention, and I put it on the WhatsApp group. We went to the Discovery Dog Show, and we were on the Scottish Terrier stand. Kath Marchbank, as you know, she invited Remy and I to go, and she was fabulous. We had the best time. We were walking around, she was looking at all the different dogs, and Kath bought 2 of her dogs, and she was fantastic. The only thing was she was a very slow walker from when I got her, so STECS very kindly got me a buggy for her, so as I could get her on the tube. Otherwise, I'd never have got there. But it was great. We had a really good day, and then a couple of weeks after that, that's when she started to, unfortunately, go downhill.
Yes, indeed. And how old was she when she passed away?
She was
and remind us,
12.
She was 12. And remind us, when was it that you lost her?
It was 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago tomorrow.
Right.
I actually pick up her ashes tomorrow.
Right, okay. So this is a very symbolic time as well, that we should be speaking to you. The one thing I wanted to ask is, when you joined the club, I mean, you obviously knew that she was unwell. You knew she had bladder cancer, but I presume that you were hoping for a fair amount of time still together, the two of you, and in the club.
I was hoping that, yes, and I mean, when the Regent's Park one, I was hoping, because I had this buggy for her. I thought, well, that's great. I can get her on the tube because I don't drive, and we could come along. And even if I was pushing her in the buggy, at least she could meet other Scotties and I could meet other Scotties. But it wasn't meant to be, unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately, that was the case. I know that Kiva, who's also unwell, she's another Scottie who is in a buggy, and they did come to Regent's Park. I mean, she has defied a lot of forecasts in terms of how long she would survive, and so she's obviously, and she even walked part of it, which was incredible.
Amazing.
It was absolutely amazing. They took her out of the buggy, and I saw along the pathway she was walking for a bit. Absolutely incredible, and great that her owners and those of Maisie, because they have two Scotties, that they make this effort. They come to these events, and it's really nice when you see owners. They don't sort of just curl up and I want to be left alone. They don't do one of those moments. It's not a Greta Garbo moment. Rather, they want to be out there and be active and connect with people. I think it's very, very nice indeed. Okay, so well, welcome to the club anyway, and it's so ironic that we never even got to actually see you on one of our walkabouts, and then this actually happened. Now the dog herself, she was a rescue, wasn't she?
Yes, she was a rescue from STECS. Kath Marchbank called me, so this was November 2020, and asked me if I would foster. And I said, "Oh, I don't know." I lost my boy Scottie in the February 2020, and it's a big decision to foster. But she said she is an older dog. She was 10 at the time, and then I asked her what her name was, and she said her name's Remy, and I had to have it. I lost my husband in November 2019, and his favourite tipper was Remy Martin Brandy. So it was meant to be. I had to have her, and unfortunately her mum had to go into a care home. She was very sick, and her mum's daughter had a French bulldog, and they didn't get on. She was in kennels for 8 weeks, poor girl. And then she came to me, and when she got out of the car, because my boy was a typical Scottie boy, very stocky, very sort of chunky, and they took her out the car, and she was tiny, and she was, I was just as worried as she was, I think, because I'd never looked after a girl, and she was 11, so she's obviously, got used to different ways of doing things than I do, possibly. But I was really surprised that she walked in the door, she came up the stairs, and she weed all over my floor. So she was obviously felt at home,
Well, I actually had that problem with one of my dogs, but he seems to do it on an almost pathological basis. But I think that's for Scottie MOT, that particular that inquiry. So obviously, right away at home, Remy obviously took to living with you, and you enjoyed a year together, which is in itself already very, very special. Now, before that, you mentioned in February 2020 you lost a Scottie.
Max.
What was his name?
I lost Max.
Max, right.
Yeah, Max was 14. I had him, well, my husband and I got him from when he was a puppy. And, you know, when we got him in, at that point in time, there wasn't really a lot known about puppy farms, and I didn't know anything about puppy farms. And it isn't until I started listening to things and thinking about it that actually he was probably one of those dogs. We actually went to a kennels in Raynham. My husband wanted a Springer Spaniel. And we got there and they had loads of Springers. But we had a rabbit at the time and they advised us against getting a Springer. So we said, oh, well, never mind, you know, that's fine. She said, oh, don't worry. She said, I've got 2 other dogs here. And one was Max, who was a Scottie and a Shih Tzu. And he was in this awful sort of kennel. We fell in love with him immediately and brought him home. But as I say, it isn't till now that I really thought about, she had too many dogs there, you know, puppies. But we had about 6.
What's your definition? Sorry to interrupt you. What's your definition of too many puppies, too many dogs? What made you think that?
She had about 20 Springers there, puppies, and she had this Shih Tzu in another one. It was a kennels. Why would you have all those puppies there?
Yeah. And was she a professional breeder, as far as you know?
I don't know because Max was very ill 3 months after we got him. We phoned her. Well, we thought we phoned the kennels, and they closed down.
Oh, right. Well, something obviously went wrong there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how long was Max with you for?
Well, we had him for 14 years. I mean, he
14 years.
Yeah, he was the most fabulous dog.
Yeah.
But he, as I say, he was very ill when he was a puppy. He had a plasma transfusion.
Right.
But thank God he was all right after that.
Yeah, and enjoyed 14 years with you. Absolutely amazing. Yeah, fantastic. So in a sort of weird sort of way, he was almost a rescue, and maybe an honorary rescue dog.
Yeah, I
don't know what
so.
we would call that, you know. But I see what your anxieties were and why you deduced that this was the situation that you were facing with Max. I mean, when Remy passed away, and of course people were responding on WhatsApp to you. I personally noticed that you were very sort of, I don't know if it's stiff upper lip, but you seem to be coping quite well. I mean, I don't know what was going through your mind when all that happened, but you seem to be weathering it.
Do you know why? It was amazing. That poor little dog was in kennels for 8 weeks, and people just don't want older dogs because of that sort of scenario that how much longer will they live? You know, am I going to have to medicate them? You know, are they going to get worse? And to be fair, I think it's really sad because that dog brought me so much joy. She was an absolute darling of a dog. She was kind. She was sweet. She brought me joy in a. Let's face it, we were in lockdown at the time. I lost my husband, I lost the dog, I lost Max, and she helped me as much as I helped her. And, I started off as fostering and I adopted her. I can't remember when it was, but I adopted her, I signed the papers, and it's the best thing I've ever done. And if anyone ever hesitated about doing that, don't hesitate, because honestly, to give a dog a home, it was so satisfying. It was such a good thing to do, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat.
Well, that's a very good endorsement. So the idea of taking a rescue is something that you would consider doing again.
I've told Kath I'd take another one tomorrow.
Okay, well, stay near your phone. You never know. You might get a phone call from her straight after the show. I mean, it is a big undertaking to have a dog in whatever shape or form, whether it's a puppy or whether it's a rescue or even if it's just to take them in for a week while your neighbours are on holiday. In all cases, it's a huge responsibility to take a dog on. But of course, we've been particularly anxious at London Scottie Club about the explosion, and that's the only word I can use, the explosion of lockdown puppies that have been emerging. And it's not just for Scottish Terriers, of course, it's true of pretty much every breed under the sun. I'm concerned as well because, dogs are not just for lockdown. And we've been campaigning quite a lot about this. I'm not sure how much we're getting through. We hope we are making progress and people are beginning to understand this. But still, I get a mailbag every week of people who are saying, can you tell us how to find a Scottish Terrier?
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel, well, people who are that scatic are not ready to own any dog. Don't worry about it being a Scottish Terrier.
Yeah.
You need to do your research. You need to do your homework. You need to understand why you want to have this dog. Why is it so urgent? Why do you want it now? What circumstances have allowed you to do this now, which didn't allow you to do this last week, and which may not allow you to do it in 2 weeks from now? This is the sort of thing, and I don't think people necessarily think that far forward. They just think it's almost like having a trophy.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I don't think people look enough into the breed and, as you say, not just Scotties, but any breed. Is it good? Have I got children? Are they good with children? Have I got a garden? 1,000 things that you need to think about before you get a dog, a cat, any pet, really. And I think this explosion of puppies is really scary, actually, because especially this time of year as well, I think, the best thing to do is to go to the kennel club every time and ask them about the breed to see if they know them. If they're too cheap, are they reputable people? Are the puppies in good condition? Have they been microchipped? The whole thing that you really need to think about before you even enter into getting any dog or any animal. And I don't think enough people do. And I've seen all the stuff you put on your site, and I think it's amazing because it really tells people, really think about it before you do it, because it is, a puppy isn't for Christmas as the advert goes on. It's not. And I don't think enough people think about it. And I think it's very sad. And I think that also with these breeders that are sort of... There was a lady over the road from me, there's a block of flats not far, and they have this puppy. It's sort of I can't explain what it looks like, but it's like a miniature bulldog. But they call it a lilac colour, the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But it was £6,000.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
novelty dogs. Yeah.
Unreal.
Yeah. Well, Scottish Terriers, we're looking at around 3,500.
Yeah.
So if somebody offers you one for a quick sale for around £2,000, which is already at twice what we were paying less than a decade ago for a puppy, but still, if it comes in at 2,000, you should walk away. Quite simply, you should walk away, because there's a very high chance that dog is being got rid of quickly and efficiently, because first of all, it's not in a very healthy state, and we don't know the efficacy around how this dog was brought into this world, and that is what we're constally dealing with. If it's too cheap, there's a reason for that, and yet if it's expensive or relatively expensive, if it's £3,500, well, of course, all it's actually doing is it's attracting the puppy farmers to come back into the market, and that's always the fight that we're dealing with. It
is, and especially things, especially with Scotties, with Radley handbags, people sort of, they see the Radley and they see it and they think, oh, yeah, I'd love one of those. But they don't, as we said earlier, they don't think of the consequences that go with it.
Yeah, I mean, the Scottie is, and it's not just that those particular handbags you mentioned, of course, it's the Monopoly board, it's, certain European retail chains. I mean, they all use the Scottish Terrier in various ways. And, of course, around Christmas time, as we all know, having, I hope, unwrapped some nice presents last week, I hope you got something nice as well under the tree there, Karen.
Thank you.
and, of course, something... you look at all the marketing that goes into these gifts, and they have Scottish Terriers very often.
Big time. I mean, I look at the Christmas cards that I've got here, and not just from people with Scotties, but Christmas cards with Scotties on. So it's, but it's really funny when we were at the dog show. I'm sure everyone can relate to this who's a Scottie owner, because people coming up to us and saying, "Oh, you don't see many of those anymore," or "Oh, my grandmother used to have one of those," or "My auntie had one of those," and it seems to be, you know, when you're a Scottie owner, that's what people tend to say to you most of the time.
You know, earlier on, I was going to ask you a question, which I'm going to anyway. And I'm really pleased that you mentioned something yourself just a few moments ago, which is very much on this very topic that I wanted to raise. And that is maybe the way forward for people and is to try before you buy. And by that, I mean, as we all know, if we're talking about human children, it's possible to adopt them, or it's also possible to foster them. And if you get on very well, you might even turn around to the authorities and say, I think I'm ready to adopt. And here is why I think I would make a good parent. And then you go through that process. I hazard to ask, because it's not, I've never heard anyone really talk about it in those same terms when it comes to acquiring a canine, but I see no reason why you can't foster a dog before deciding whether or not to adopt. And I'll give you one lovely anecdote, if I can. The people down the road here, there's a 12 and 14-year-old. The son was 12. The daughter's 14 years of age. So they're certainly not toddlers, but yet they're not fully legally independent either. And so they're at that sort of age where they can start to take some responsibility. And I noticed they would, at weekends, they would be walking a dog. It wasn't a Scottie, I'm afraid, but I think it was a retriever or a Labrador. Anyway, they would walk this dog, and I would see, and I sometimes would talk to them, obviously when I'm walking my dogs, and say, "Oh, hello, nice to see you." And I would say to the boy, I'd say, "How come I only ever see you walking this dog on a Saturday, and maybe on a Sunday? I never see you doing this during the week. Who does that?" And he said, "Well, it's not my dog." I was a bit staggered by this. What were you doing walking this dog then? And, you know, you're a 12-year-old and you're walking someone else's dog. It turns out that his parents had told him and his daughter, him and his sister, that if they would agree to take a dog from somebody that they knew, a friend, obviously of the family, at weekends, and they could show that they could demonstrate that they could be responsible around looking after that dog, then and only then would the parents agree to actually getting a dog. Until then, they were basically out to trial.
What a fabulous idea.
Absolutely brilliant, isn't it? And I just thought, you know what? And of course, since then, they've moved to a bigger house and they have indeed got a dog. So clearly they passed the test. And you could tell that both he and his sister were absolutely devoted to that dog.
That's
and I just think, great routine, you know, because we all know what happens. You know, kids want for Christmas or for their birthday, the dog comes as a puppy. Within 6 months, the kids are tired of walking them, probably more focused on their school and homework. And then suddenly it becomes mum or dad's responsibility to walk that dog. And it becomes a chore rather than a pleasure. And you begin to wonder, whose dog is this anyway? It's a messy, mixed up situation, but it's inevitable. It happens in so many families.
But I think that's a fantastic idea. And there's also, I mean, there's a dog shelter near us, there's an animal shelter near us, and you can go and volunteer, and you can walk the dogs at the weekend. Yeah. So that's also another way if you don't know anyone with a dog.
Exactly. So I agree. So I think rather than people sort of saying, "Well, I want to get a dog and see how we go," that is the I want people to be thinking. I want people to say, I know I want a dog because I've already tried it. I've tried before I buy. Yeah. And, you know, if there's any doubt, because it's not just about the routines that go with raising a dog. It's also about whether that particular dog, that particular breed of dog, and that particular personality of dog, because every dog's got its own personalities, you know, every single one of them, you know, whether they get on, and how better than to foster them. So sort of extending on from these kids who were looking after the Labrador, I would say for anyone who's looking to have a dog, maybe you want to do the right thing and you want to therefore rehome a rescue Scottie that needs a home, and there are always around 50 a year that do need that sort of help. but rather than just leaping into this and saying, oh, well, this is one way, I don't have to buy a dog, I can get one from a charity like STECS. Well, no, you can't. It's not that simple. You've got to be vetted, and everybody's got to be agreed that this is the right dog and this is the right owner, and put them together. It really is a bit of a matchmaking service in that sense.
It certainly is.
But fostering, would you agree that fostering would be a wonderful way to bring that all together? Because you're simply saying, well, I'm not signing on the dotted line. I'm simply agreeing to take the dog for a few months, see how we both get on.
I think it's a marvellous idea because, as I say, when I took Remy, Max was my first dog. My husband had dogs previously, but I'd never, when I was growing up, we had a cat. And Peter and I lived in a flat in North London. And then he retired, we moved here, we bought the house. And once he'd retired, that's when we decided to get a dog because it wouldn't have been fair. We were both working full time. And as I say, when it makes a big difference. Dogs need company, as you very well know. So if you're working full time, just to get a dog is ridiculous anyway, because you can't leave the dog on its own all the time. So to foster, it gives you an idea of how you will be with a dog if you've never had one before, if your kids have never been, around dogs. It's an incredible idea.
One of the things that we now look at is the sort of trends, what happens after the pandemic. It's a bit rich, I know, because we're very far from seeing the end of this pandemic, it seems. But let's be optimistic and let's hope that in the year ahead we will vanquish this horrible virus.
I hope so.
And if we do, what happens then? Now, here's where one of the problems comes up, because too many people have taken to the view, well, I've been teleworking for the last 2 years, so I'll just carry on doing that because my employer will surely agree to that. As you know, Karen, that's not always the case. And a lot of employers are very old-fashioned. I mean, it's true that the pandemic has disrupted things in many ways, and it has made employers think, do we really need to be renting this expensive place in central London? Maybe we can ask people to work from home. And so there will be a progressive employers who see that, but there are also going to be those who are a bit of a stick in the mud and who will say, no, well, I want them back to work. This is how it always was, and this is how it should be again. And if that happens, what then happens to the dog that you were so confident to get during the pandemic because you were so convinced the employer would always agree that you could work from home, and it wasn't to be? What then? And
it's also, to get a dog sitter, it's not cheap. For example, I had to go in a couple of days into the office, which I very rarely do. And, you're looking at £10, £12 an hour for a dog sitter.
Yep, all adds up. Certainly does. Really does add up.
Yeah.
So, Karen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm really pleased you've joined us on this programme today to talk about your own experiences.
Thank you.
You've been a fosterer, an adopter of rescues, and you're not fazed by the whole thing. You're happy to try it again if the opportunity arises. So, do you? I know it's all a bit too early to ask you what your plans are for the future, but at least you're open-minded about this, and you would consider having another rescue, Scottie.
I would absolutely not hesitate. If Kath phoned me tonight and said there was a dog needed help, then I'd be there definitely, because it really does. It makes your it's very heartwarming, to help a dog that is in need, and it was fabulous. And I would say to anyone, think about it. But I loved it. I would do it again, no problem. Even with the emotions and the fact that you only had a year together and everything, it doesn't alter that. I had the most lovely vet, and he looked after my Max. And when I took Remy to him, and he went, "Oh no, Karen, not again." And I said, "But she was such a lovely dog." And I got the most wonderful letter from my vet, a note saying what a lovely dog she was, and it was an absolute pleasure to look after her. So what more could you want, What a wonderful endorsement. Yeah. Karen, I very much hope that the new year 2022 brings you much joy, brightness and health, and of course, a Scottie. Thank you. And may I say Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year to you too. Thank you very much for joining us on Collared.
We'll see you around, hopefully on one of those walkabouts in the near future.
Hopefully. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to London Scottie Radio. This and all our podcasts are available online at londonscottie.club. If you liked it, be sure to subscribe to us from your favourite podcast player app. Also visit us on YouTube for fun videos. And if you have a Scottish Terrier in London or nearby, be sure to join us.